went in there to save you.
That was his mistake.
The music hits, the mask comes off, and it's f***ing Professor Callahan. I instantly questioned every life choice I'd ever made because that twist was so bad. Twist villains are supposed to blow your mind. They should hit like King Candy's twist into Turbo, Omni-Man in Invincible, Aaron showing up as Prowler in Spider-Verse, or Mr. Waternoose in Monsters. These twist villains give the story this extra layer of, I got to rewatch this movie. But somehow movie studios keep finding new and not so exciting ways to mess things up. And honestly, I miss the golden era of villains. I'm still hoping they bring back villains like Frollo, whose motivations were just genocide and really wanting to bang a teenager.
You think you've outwitted me, but I'm a patient man.
FBI, open up!
Or like Jafar, whose motivations were world domination and also really wanting to bang a teenager.
And the street rat.
This video is about characters that could have been something, but weak foreshadowing and lazy writing dragged them down. So what makes a good twist villain? They leave clues, breadcrumbs. They shape the story from the background, even if we don't realize it until later. Think of Lotso from Toy Story 3. A sweet old grandpa bear, and then out of nowhere he locks up toys like it's toy prison. But when that twist hits, it works. Because the signs were always there. His bitterness, his control freak vibes, and even his creepy strawberry smell. This teaches us that good twist writing is finding that magical sweet spot between obvious and out of nowhere. So okay guys, who else missed that memo? Let's start with a dude who went from hero to snail assassin in less than 2 seconds. Remember Turbo? That one DreamWorks movie where a snail gets super speed and decides to become a race car driver? Wild, right? But well, that's not even the most unbelievable part. Let's meet my guy, Mr. Gier. You know, that one guy with the energy drink sponsorship. Okay, kidding guys, he's the racing legend, fan favorite, and the reason Turbo wants to hit the track in the first place. At first, Gier is this charming, all-smiles hero. He takes selfies, hypes up the crowd, and even encourages Turbo to chase his dreams. And then, out of nowhere, this man goes full villain. I'm talking publicly tries to kill a snail villain. In front of a damn crowd. With cameras. The problem with Gier? There's zero build-up. No warning signs, no shady looks, no cryptic lines, no, maybe this guy isn't who he seems. Gier just flips from role model to psycho in the span of one conversation, and they really left me thinking like, was this even in the script yesterday? This is a classic case of a twist for twist's sake. The writers clearly wanted a betrayal moment but forgot to write a good story. If they'd given us even a hint, like Gier maybe acting a little too obsessed with his image, or maybe dismissing underdogs when the cameras aren't rolling, it would have gone a long way. Instead, the villain twist just feels like a cheap shortcut. One minute you're cheering for him, the next he's trying to turn Turbo into escargot. I was like, if you're trying to protect your squeaky clean image as a beloved racing legend, maybe don't suddenly start acting like a massive jerk in front of a stadium full of fans and live cameras. What's worse is that he exposes his evil side to a snail. A f***ing snail who can't even speak human.
Snail.
I still feel like this movie could have been so much better if Gier wasn't an asshole. It was a whole lot better if he just wanted Turbo to race because he was actually rooting for him to prove everyone wrong, but wasn't willing to hand Turbo the win either. But instead of that, they turned this guy into a true sociopath. This is exactly what happens when the twist isn't earned. It doesn't feel like a reveal. It feels like a character got body snatched mid-movie. And that's a popular way nowadays to turn a cool idea into a forgettable mess. Gier wanted to prove something. Instead, our bro got sat down. But don't get me wrong, I don't hate Turbo. I can't say it's one of my favorite movies, but I don't think it's bad either. I always love the shells with the car spoilers on the back. I think Turbo is kind of like Cars and Ratatouille combined, right? It's actually so dumb that it becomes fun if you get me. So last week, I rewatched Frozen again. Yep, Frozen. And to be honest with you guys, I'm now in doubt whether Hans is a villain with a decent twist or still a villain with the shittiest twist ever. Okay, and before you are going to kick down my door at 3 a.m. with pitchforks for liking Hans, let me explain. At one hand, I'm still convinced Hans is Disney's godfather of a bad twist villain. You're just vibing on Frozen, watching Elsa casually freezing the kingdom. You see a perfect prince with a perfect smile and perfect hair. He even sings. Then suddenly, he locks Anna in a room to die and goes full Disney villain mode. No warning, no warm-up, he's just evil. Almost everything that happens would have happened anyway if he wasn't there, in my opinion. I feel like originally Hans was a perfectly decent guy, but what Anna and Hans had just wasn't true love. And when the kiss doesn't work, Hans gets angry and takes it out on Elsa. But at some point someone went like, just make him evil. And then tried to play it off as a twist, except a good twist should have hints. You should be able to go back and see the signs in hindsight. Here, it was totally out of left field and contradicted most of his actions throughout the movie. So, yep, I totally agree when fans say that Hans is a terrible twist villain. On the other hand, hear me out. The shortcomings are also the reasons why it somehow also works, I guess, but I just realized this after the rewatch. He doesn't show any signs of evil to begin with, and the thing is, a lot of truly wicked people actually don't, right? There's no shortage of testimonials about murderers and mass shooters from people saying, "We didn't have a clue. He was well liked by the community and always seemed so nice." That's how some villains are. They aren't always malevolent, cackling monsters who wear the "I'm the bad guy" t-shirt. Some of them can go for ages without ever showing a sign of their malice. That's why, when they suddenly stab you in the back, it's so much more shocking and the betrayal feels so much deeper.
All that's left now is to kill Elsa and bring back Summer.
When I watched it, I actually realized he follows the abusive partner playbook to a T. Love bombs at the beginning and always says and does exactly what she wants. Goes from just met you to madly in love and picking vulnerable and more naive people. Followed by a slow progression of wanting more power and acting different than he says so. For example, when he tries to save Elsa while aiming at the chandelier. Then finally, he shows his true nature when he has full power over people, especially when he doesn't need them anymore. So maybe the fault in this movie was that they had to give us some chance to identify Hans as a villain before they revealed him as a villain. During the rewatch, if you pay attention, you can pick up some clues like extreme simping combined with his rush to marry, but still, I think Hans definitely had more potential. I didn't like Hans either. I'm still doubting if I like him though. A good twist to me isn't one you never saw coming or suspected. If that was the case, then probably Olaf would make a great villain for me, because I would never expect a twist so ridiculous. Even with all the foreshadowing I noticed during the rewatch, it still led to a kind of unsatisfying reveal that left me scratching my head. Okay, now someone else. Maybe one of the weirdest twists in recent Pixar history, Zurg from Lightyear. Now, for those of us who grew up watching Buzz Lightyear throw hands with Emperor Zurg in Toy Story, this guy was hyped as the ultimate space villain. Big, intimidating, evil laugh. Like the whole Darth Vader package, his voice, the gun, his design. He's basically Vader and Palpatine at the same time. So when Pixar finally gave us a full Lightyear movie, I was so pumped to see Zurg go full villain mode. But what did we get instead? Buzz Lightyear as f***ing Zurg. The twist is that Zurg isn't f***ing Zurg. He's an older version of Buzz from the future who turned evil after obsessively trying to fix the past. I wish they actually had Zurg as Buzz's actual dad, or his son from the future instead of just him from the future, but guess they didn't want it all to be a plain copy of Star Wars. I mean, that would be such a good twist, right? However, the twist really had potential. The idea of Buzz becoming his own worst enemy is actually also kind of brilliant. It could have been this deep exploration of identity, regret, and how good intentions can go super dark. But the problem isn't the idea, it's the whole execution. There's no foreshadowing, no signs again. No little moments where Buzz starts questioning his actions or meets someone who makes him think something like, Maybe I could turn into something darker if I'm not careful. Nope. Nothing. The Lightyear movie was definitely not a good representation of the evil Emperor Zurg I was excited for. They should have stuck to the Toy Story 2 or Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. The twist just drops somewhere mid-movie, and instead of being mind-blown, I was literally mentally checking the time and wondering if Andy ever saw this version of Buzz and went, "I'll take the toy version." To be honest, I do think the animated series Zurg is more intimidating. It was somehow more unique. I really like the voice and the personality, but on the other hand, the redesign is also okay because it turns Zurg from a toy parodying Darth Vader to a towering mechanical emperor. However, I do wish he kept the cape though. That would have been great. And yep guys, it gets worse. After the big reveal, future Buzz doesn't even do much. He talks a lot. He waves around his big evil plan, but he doesn't feel dangerous. For me, almost everything about the movie Zurg is too stupid to be intimidating. I kinda liked the movie up until the reveal. That kinda killed it for me. All they had to do was make this guy an evil space emperor. The design was really solid, but the twist just feels like a last-minute thing they did, because they couldn't come up with a good way to make Zurg Buzz's dad. And to top things off, his minions actually looked like Zgok. I'm 100% certain that someone in the development team watched Gundam before making Zurg and his minions. This twist could have been amazing, and I think that reason got me upset even more. However, I do need to give them the credit that the mech was awesome. Our next victim is Mrs. Evelyn Deaver from The Incredibles. I waited 14 years and I definitely wanted syndrome-level greatness, but instead, we got Evelyn. And no, she's not a bad twist villain because of her name. It's because her motivation is just really stupid. She wants revenge on the Supers because her father was reliant on them? Because they didn't arrive in 0.5 seconds? Like, come on. Couldn't they really think of something better after 14 years? Like, if he had instead tried to call the cops, her motivation would be to abolish the damn police? There's, by the way, one hint early on that she's the villain. When we first see her on the screen, she's coming in with her shopping. The way she just dumps all her bags and packages on the servant. People who treat their employees with disrespect are never good people. But to be honest, I actually just refuse to watch this movie because the plot is basically grown woman gets revenge on people because her daddy can't function without people wiping his butt for him. It wouldn't be so bad if we didn't have to wait so long for this film. To come up with such a lazy antagonist is actually straight up insulting the audience. Well, at least we're getting an Incredibles 3. Hopefully it's more like the first one. Okay guys, now I need to talk about Big Hero 6. Okay. Maybe this one is a bit obvious for some of you, because Yokai, aka Professor Callahan, somehow manages to be both forgettable and frustrating as a twist villain. The setup was great. Tadashi dies in a fire while trying to save Professor Callahan. Tragic, emotional, even heartbreaking. Then the mysterious kabuki-masked villain shows up controlling microbots and everything. Cool, super creepy, and very anime final boss vibes. But then it's... Callahan? What the f***? The guy who got maybe 5 minutes of screen time before dying. That guy's the big twist villain? This is the perfect example of that so many masked villains just lose all their aura the moment they take their mask off. I like his design, not his stake. To be honest with you guys, his motivation almost works. Callahan lost his daughter. That sucks. Really sucks. He's angry. He wants revenge. Totally fair villain backstory, but the thing is, none of it is set up. We don't get hints. We don't see cracks in his calm professor vibe. Nothing. He also tried to murder a literal child and didn't flinch when someone told him the kid's brother died trying to save him. That moment was meant to show he'd crossed a serious line. Hyro loses it. He tells Baymax to kill him. Callahan really had potential. They could have shown him being subtly bitter. Maybe show him clashing with Cray. Let us feel that he's got some darker thoughts boiling underneath that calm exterior. Callahan is what Hero would have been like if he kept going down that path.
It's over, Cray. Professor Callahan?
So the mystery is weak, the reveal is actually weaker. Okay, Professor Callahan maybe isn't the worst twist villain for me, but he's not the best either. whatever happened to villains being evil just because they were evil? Callahan's real mistake was being bland. Now a twist villain, who maybe actually wasn't really a twist villain at all. You could tell he was kind of shady from the trailer, right? Actually, even from the movie poster. Yep, it's about King Magnifico. If you want an in-depth analysis of him and why he flopped so hard, I would say, please check out my other video where I break him down, but he still deserves a mention here. Because Magnifico is a prime example of a twist villain where the only thing twisted is how the hell they expect you to be happy that they ruined a good movie. Watching Wish through an adult's eyes, it wasn't reasonable of Magnifico to not want to grant a wish because it was too vague. It also wasn't reasonable of him not to give the wishes back, considering the fact the people of Rosas gave those wishes voluntarily as a payment to stay here. He built the kingdom from the ground up, and just wanted to make sure that the same thing that happened to his family didn't happen again. He's doing what he thinks is right, although he might be a little bit of a control freak. But you can't blame him when you think about what he's been through. As much as I love this movie for its art style, the execution of the movie was so poor. As much as I wanted to like Asha, she was just an intolerable teenager. She overthrew a king because she got mad he told her granting a vague wish was bad, and that he wasn't going to grant it because it was too vague. In my opinion, Asha should be considered the main villain of Wish. She doesn't save her people, she just causes a ripple effect that turns a once happy and thriving kingdom and a good person into an unhappy place with an evil king. This movie could have been so much better, but it was so disappointing. And at last, a twist villain who didn't even try to hide because she wasn't even in the story to begin with. Dawn Bellweather, assistant mayor of Zootopia. However, if you blinked, you probably missed her first few scenes entirely. And then suddenly, plot twist. She's the criminal mastermind behind the whole Predator Panic conspiracy. For me, she was a pretty flat villain. There was little foreshadowing to it, and while a motive could be implied from the movie, her actions points more towards her being power-hungry than actually resentful towards predators. And all that came from a speech she had in the last minutes of the movie. As a character, she is just not very interesting. Maybe she was a pretty okay twist antagonist, but I just don't think she is memorable enough. Good twist villains are the kind like Stinky Pete from Toy Story 2. You understood his motivation, maybe even agreed with him, but after the reveal you realize that he is ready to go to inhuman lengths to get what he wants, which even if his original goals weren't evil, his methods and inability to care for others was. That is just not the case with Bellweather. She did fill the role she needed to in Zootopia, but objectively she's bad in my opinion. Not enough screen time, no real performance. Zootopia didn't need a big, strong villain. The story wasn't like Hercules, for example, where the villain was the best, most memorable part. She felt more like a forced villain rather than a twist villain. Honestly, something that could go a long way is having Bellweather actually become vocally anti-predator after she becomes mayor, and make it so she's one of the leading reasons tensions start to flare up. I'm not saying make her explicitly the villain as soon as she becomes mayor, but perhaps emphasize that she's bought into these ideas. The original film is so invested in the shock value involved in the twist coming out of nowhere. If we are led to believe she's just misguided, her eventual reveal as the mastermind will still come as a surprise, but it will be much more logical to me. So why do studios keep making these twist villains like it's a good tradition? Modern movies, especially in the animation and superhero world, are less about telling one solid story and more about setting up the next 10 movies and spin-offs. And in the middle of all that, twist villains often now get treated like filler content. Just throw one in at the end, shock the audience, and move on to the next sequel. It's lazy, but it keeps happening, right? One of the last very good Disney villains I can remember was Dr. Facilier from The Princess and the Frog. Is this a sign that I'm getting old, or is Disney just lacking, guys? The best twist villains don't just appear, they stay with you throughout the story. You feel their presence, their actions shape the plot even when you don't know it's them behind the scenes. And in the end, it all makes sense.